Alright, hello everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're cooking a Panda Express hack that I had written a few months ago for the Kung Pao chicken. It's kind of gonna deviate quite a bit actually. The original version that I had written follows pretty closely to the original Panda Express version for their Kung Pao chicken. Today we're going to be using a few different substitutes that I have like sort of incorporated for, I guess you could call it like a Woo Can Cook version. A couple of, I suppose the primary things that we're going to be adding that don't really belong in a traditional Panda or Kung Pao chicken like the one from Panda Express. A couple of things. The main things are going to be black bean sauce and lao gan ma or doubanjiang, lao gan ma and doubanjiang, both of which are going to add a little bit of spiciness and heat to our version today. If you have any questions for me, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about Kung Pao chicken or Panda Express or anything really, but I know lots of stuff. So hopefully I can be helpful or informative, or I can at least be fun to watch. As always, if you're looking for the recipes for the things that I cook on stream, those always live over on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel yet, that's a good place to go if you're trying to cook the things that I'm cooking. Or also lots of people just like to binge watch the recipe videos. That's a fun thing that people do. You can watch like 5 hours of me just talking about food. People say that's been really relaxing, so that's cool too. You can do that too. That all lives over on the YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/woocancook. If you're watching on YouTube, that's the channel you're already on. If you're watching on Reddit right now, that's the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. Lots of fun content like that coming up over there. Those recipes, they're out every Friday, so this recipe came out a couple Fridays ago. I want to say like a Friday back in December or something like that. And then we've got lots of fun stuff coming up soon. This coming Friday is going to be a pad see ew recipe, which is going to be really tasty. Friday after that, I forget what's coming after that. But lots of new recipes coming up over on the YouTube channel every Friday, so if you haven't checked that stuff out, hop over and check it out. But for today, we're going to be doing some Kung Pao chicken, so this particular version is going to be using a couple of different vegetable elements. I want to say like the truest intent of Kung Pao chicken is just about like what a Kung Pao chicken really is essentially just a big old vegetable stir fry with chicken in it. And I guess like one of like the really critical elements is actually nuts. So super often you'll see cashews. Today I'm going to be using peanuts. But really all it is a big old vegetable stir fry. So if you are looking for various ways of deviating from this recipe, it's really just about using what you have in the refrigerator. Today we're going to be actually sticking fairly close to the original recipe that I had written. We're going to be using red bell pepper and then a zucchini and then a little bit of sweet white onion, so half of a sweet white onion. So I'm pretty sure in the original recipe that I had written, those are the three vegetables that I had used in the recipe too, so that's a good one to go with. But I have also done orange bell pepper, I've done green bell pepper. Green bell pepper is kind of gross. Lots of different kinds of vegetables. I've used, what else have I used? Celery is a really good filler veggie if you're trying to add a little bit of heartiness to your Kung Pao chicken. Really any kind of vegetable that you happen to have on hand. You could use a squash, some kind of zucchini squash would be cool too. Or I guess zucchini is a squash. But all of those excellent elements that you can add to a Kung Pao chicken, I'd say. As long as it's a vegetable that will hold up in a wok fry, it's going to work out pretty good. Hermina, yeah, how's it going? Oh, really busy. That's cool. Good to be busy. So, as with many vegetable stir fries, especially the Chinese ones that I do, I'm starting off with 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, which is what I just finished doing. Followed by, this is going to be about a tablespoon or relatively close to an inch's worth of finely minced ginger. So, ginger is kind of hard to measure because it grows in weird knobs. So I have like, I would say this is like gonna come close to what's about a tablespoon's worth of ginger. Sometimes I overshoot it, which is not a big deal because ginger is really cheap, and also that happens sometimes too. But what we're after here is about what should end up being about a tablespoon of ginger. So once you're done mincing it, it's going to be a lot easier to measure. So I'm just peeling my ginger. That's just to get the exterior rougher part of the ginger's skin off. And then what we're going to do is give it a fine mince. Starting off with a rough dice, like so. So this just slices down the center, one down the middle, and stopping there. If we were to stop there, that would essentially be a rough dice. So something that you might do, or a pretty similar process that you might do if you were dicing onions. But for our ginger, however, we do need the fine mince, which means it's going to take a little bit more work. But we don't want large chunks of ginger floating around in our finished stir fry. That's how you get, if you've ever had a stir fry that's like got way too much ginger in it, it's probably not because it has too much ginger in it. It's probably because the ginger wasn't cut properly. So what we want to do is be very, very thorough with our fine mince, especially on this ginger, just to make sure that we don't have large chunks of ginger floating around. If you are sloppy with your fine mince at this point, that's how you end up with like random bites of your stir fry where you have like huge amounts of ginger in it because it's got like a big old chunk of ginger. So that's what we want to avoid happening. Cool. So that's our ginger. It looks about like a tablespoon. So I'm going to set those two elements aside. Those are going to be what we refer to as the aromatic elements of our wok fry. For the, as the name implies, reason because it's aromatic. They are very pungent. They smell like garlic and ginger when we fry them up. Next up is going to be a red bell pepper. So, I mentioned this earlier too, but at this point, use whatever vegetables you have. I want to say that a red bell pepper and a zucchini are two like really, really classic vegetables that you can add to a kung pao chicken. Probably two of the more common. I'm pretty sure it's the two vegetables that the Panda Express version has actually. I'm pretty sure it has zucchini and bell pepper, specifically a red bell pepper because it's really pretty. Personally, for my taste, I actually like orange bell peppers a little bit better because they're a little bit sweeter, and I think like maybe a little bit riper too. But I actually think if we're going for plating, the red bell pepper is actually going to look better because it's like brighter and more in the color palette. So depending on what you're going for, if you want it to look pretty, go for red. And I'm going to dice this up. I'm going for a really large dice here today. I personally, I like these to have a good amount of chew to it. I don't want these to disappear in our stir fry. So we have like, these are about like an inch in size. This is pretty large. This is a very large piece of bell pepper. We want them to be pretty large so that they don't kind of like disappear because the other elements of our wok fry today are going to be our zucchini, which we're going to be dicing in a similar size. All right. So our zucchini, we're going to do a very similar thing. We're going to dice it in a pretty large dice. But at this point, you may notice that a whole big part of how we do a kung pao chicken, it starts in exactly the same way as many, many vegetable stir fries, which is just about cutting up a lot of vegetables and like chicken and stuff. So the reason that we do this, we call that mise en place. It comes from French cooking. And that's essentially, I believe the direct translation would be everything in its place. And the reason that we do that is because in wok cooking, wok heat is very, very hot. It's going to be actually a lot hotter than probably most other types of cuisine that you will cook with. So in order to make sure that we don't end up burning stuff, we want to make sure that we have all of this prep work done. So if you've ever followed one of these streams before, you will have found that probably the first half of the stream, close to the first half of the stream at least, is going to end up being just chopping various vegetables. And that's because once we get to the stove and start cooking stuff, there's not going to be really a lot of opportunity to do anything else because the wok fry element is going to happen in like maybe 10 minutes, maybe even less than that. So we want to be done with all of this chopping before we head to the stove. Cool. Next up, this is a sweet white onion. This is going to be half of a sweet white onion because that's what I have. The main element that we want to be wary of anytime that you work with onion, really, but especially in wok fries, is that they're going to be a lot more delicate, especially in today's wok fry, actually, because of all of the more hearty vegetables that we're going to be cooking with are going to cook very, very differently from the way that this onion is going to cook. So a zucchini is very hearty, same as a bell pepper, also very, very hearty. So we want to do a couple of things to make sure that it cooks in a similar fashion as our zucchini. So the main thing that I'm doing today to start, first off, is cutting it in very, very large pieces. So this is a really big dice, so we can see our onion pieces. They look something like this. And this is probably something similar to what you would see in a lot of wok fries when you get them at restaurants. They're going to look something like this. Big old chunks of onion. And the reason that we do that is because onions are very, very delicate. So if they overcook, they pretty much just disappear because an onion is filled with water. So if you cook out too much of the water in your onion, it will literally just vanish into your wok fry. It might taste like onion a little bit, but you're not going to get any crispy elements. You're not really even going to find an onion. So we want to start by chopping it really large, and then the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to add it really, really late. It's going to probably be the last thing that goes into our wok fry before we finish it. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that is it. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Next up is our chicken. So today this is going to be some chicken thigh. I love using chicken thigh for a kung pao chicken because it has a little bit more fat to it. So it gives us a little bit more richness to the whole thing. You can also use chicken breast. It will work just fine too. I oftentimes will use those two things interchangeably. But generally when you're cooking Chinese food, you will very, very often see the use of chicken thigh. My theory to that is because chicken thigh is cheaper, probably. That's the main reason. It's a little bit cheaper. But also it comes from the more dark meat, and more importantly, it also has a little bit more fat to it. So you can see all of our fat right here, all of this white. Everything in our chicken that's white right now, so you see all of this stuff right here, that's all fat. All right here, here. All of that is fat. So I know some people have asked me many times why I don't trim off the fat of our chicken thigh. And that's very specifically, if you were using chicken thigh and you don't want fat, then you shouldn't use chicken thigh. You should just use chicken breast. But that fat is actually going to play a really, really important element in our stir fry today because it's going to render into a thick and luxurious liquid element of fat. So once we have that liquid fat element, then we can start cooking in it, and it will play a big part in developing a thick and cohesive sauce. Statusmatic, how's it going? Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Very specifically, I realize that there is a lot of fat on the chicken, but we want it. It's really important, especially in wok frying. It's going to play a huge part in developing a thick sauce, so don't just trim that stuff off. And if you don't like fat, if you want it to be a little bit leaner, that's absolutely fine. But if you're going to go for a leaner cut of chicken, you might as well just use chicken breast because it will save you a lot of time and you won't have to trim it off at all. Last thing I'm going to do before I clean my cutting board off is set up a marinade for our chicken. I love marinating the chicken just a little bit. We're not going to add a lot of stuff because there's going to be quite a few things going into our sauce base already. But I love adding a bit to it, and that's just going to kind of develop a nice little bit of depth of flavor. I'm starting off, that's 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, followed by 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine, which is a form of Chinese cooking wine. Shaoxing wine, if you can't find it, it's very, very similar to dry cooking sherry. And probably if you find a good quality dry cooking sherry, it's probably going to taste a little bit better than most Shaoxing wine that you find in Chinese cooking stores, because it's going to be a little bit higher quality. Dark meat tastes the best. Yeah, it definitely does. Although I want to say that it doesn't taste the best because it's dark meat. I think it tastes the best because it has more fat to it. I honestly, if we were overlooking the fat element, it kind of just tastes the same to me. And I oftentimes will use them interchangeably. All right, so that's 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of sesame oil. 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine, and this is finally 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce. And then the last 2 things that we're going to add are some dry elements here. So this is going to be about half a teaspoon of white pepper for a bit of aromatic flavor. And then the last thing, and I want to say this might be the most important part of your chicken marinade today, is half a teaspoon of cornstarch. So the cornstarch is not going to taste like anything, but what it is going to do is it's going to slow down the exterior cooking process of your chicken. So yeah, you will see me adding cornstarch to a lot of marinades for the reason that we want to slow down that exterior cook time, because in a wok fry, that wok is going to get really, really hot, and the exterior of your chicken is going to cook a lot faster than the interior would. So super, super often, if you've ever come across this issue where you're wok frying and the exterior of the chicken is done, but the interior is still undercooked. So very often you'll come across either overcooked chicken because you were waiting for the interior to finish, or you'll find raw or undercooked chicken, both of which not going to work out for you. So what we do, and this is going to happen a lot in a lot of Chinese food, is we add a little bit of cornstarch to our marinade and just sort of coat the chicken in that cornstarch. And that's not going to taste like anything. It's really just going to slow down that cooking process, not by much, by maybe 30-45 seconds or so. And that's going to give our chicken a little bit more time to catch up with the interior. It's going to give the interior of the chicken a little bit more time to catch up as that exterior slows down. Michael reached, yeah, Sarah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad someone noticed. Yes, we did reach the mic goal. So I ordered that over on, I forget where I ordered it from, but I ordered a new mic, so that's coming very soon. I think it's coming on Thursday, so I'll come Thursday. Hopefully by Thursday, I think. I'll have a new microphone, and then it will sound a lot better, and it will stop crapping out. I'm very excited. But thank you. And then, yeah, and then every time we reach a goal, I like to show you guys the new gear, so whenever that comes, I can show you how it looks and how much better it is. Also, we can compare it, A/B it to the shittier mic that we're talking into right now. So. Cool. All right, so that's our chicken. Next up, I'm going to assemble my sauce here. So if you've ever watched a restaurant chef cook in a restaurant, they cook Kung Pao chicken in a restaurant, or probably most wok stir fries. Usually what you'll see them doing, oftentimes they'll be using a big old soup ladle, and they'll just ladle that stuff straight into the wok. And the reason that they can do that is because they're probably cooking the same thing like 50, 60 times a day. And they're not really even tasting the season anymore. They're really just going by muscle memory and kind of like how it looks, how it feels, the color of it generally. And that's because they've cooked it so many times that they don't really need to taste it anymore because they cook it so often. For our purposes, especially for home cooking, but generally I'll do this with pretty much every recipe. I want to say there's maybe a handful of recipes that I've actually stopped tasting. But especially for a Kung Pao chicken, I haven't cooked this in a couple of months. I love assembling these sauces off heat so that we can stop and taste. So we can adjust season, maybe add a little bit of salt, add more soy sauce, add more fish sauce, whatever it needs, we can adjust it and kind of tweak it to make sure that it is where we want it to be. Any opportunity that we can insert to stop and taste is going to be very, very important, especially in recipes that include raw meat, because there will oftentimes be very little opportunity to do that. Obviously, we can't taste our marinade because it has raw chicken in it, so we can't taste it. Which means that we want to insert every opportunity that we can to stop and taste it. So for a sauce like this, very, very useful to assemble it off heat. Ketchup, well, which woks do I like? Yeah, lots of folks ask me about the wok. So the wok that we're using today, check it out. Here's my wok behind me. Actually just cleaned it, so it looks really pretty. My wok today is made out of carbon steel. That's generally the way that carbon steel is gonna look. It's very like dark and patinaed. It's also really pretty because I just finished cleaning it. It took me like basically all weekend to clean it that well. But I love using a carbon steel wok. It's going to look something like that. Very, very often when you first buy a carbon steel wok, it will look something more like this. So this is the handle of my wok. And it's like a little bit lighter, not nearly as like worn or like colored, I guess like discolored you could even call it, you would generally refer to that as like a patina. And I always say it like when folks ask about wok recommendations, the first thing that I say is I don't particularly have an attachment to any one brand of wok. What I mostly look out for are like the materials that the wok is made out of. So this wok, I wish I could recommend it to folks, but I actually have no idea what the brand is. I bought it from a restaurant supply store, and I don't think that it even has a brand. I think it's just some restaurant supplier that creates woks for restaurants. But what I love about it is that it's made out of carbon steel, and it's just one giant piece of carbon steel. So the whole thing is just one big piece of carbon steel that's been shaped into a round bottom wok. So I love carbon steel, works really great. I also learned how to cook on a stainless steel wok, which was really, really great. And I used to own a good cast iron wok that I think was a Lodge wok, which was also really good, but also super heavy. I think it was like 30 pounds. So yeah, those would be the things that I would recommend. And then, yeah, if you're still not sure, I've heard a lot of good things about the Joyce Chen wok, although I haven't really cooked on it a lot. I maybe used a friend's like once. Yeah. Cool. All right, so back to our sauce. Good tangent. That was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of fish sauce. So fish sauce, super, super useful here. But also not really that traditional. Probably more traditionally you would find in a Kung Pao chicken the use of oyster sauce, which is going to be a similar element of like fishy umami, but more traditionally found in Chinese food. Whereas fish sauce is probably more traditionally found in like Vietnamese or Thai food. But this particular recipe today, we're going to use fish sauce instead of oyster sauce because we're trying to like remove a little bit of these sugary elements, and like oyster sauce has a little bit more sugar than I wanted to add, so we're using a little bit of fish sauce instead, which is also still kind of sweet, but just felt a little bit more appropriate. Oh, Kit Kat, yeah, good question. What's the best way to season a wok? So that again, so that also will depend on what is the wok made out of. So if your wok is, first off, I'll start by saying if your wok is made out of cast iron, it's going to work the same way as any other cast iron skillet. It's just, I mean, probably the best way of seasoning a wok is just cook on it. Just start using it and it will work. But with cast iron, especially, if you just start cooking on it and using it, it will eventually start building up a patina and sort of like developing that non-stick surface. Same is pretty true for carbon steel too, as it eventually just starts building up a seasoning. I guess you could call it a seasoning. Really what it is it's a patina, so it's sort of like the wear of the wok. And like the more that you break it in, the more of a non-stick surface that it will have. So when I first bought this wok, I almost threw it. I came really close to throwing it out because it only cost $10. So I got super frustrated and I almost threw it out. And then I just kept cooking on it, and around like the 7th or 8th cook on it, things stopped sticking to it. But when I first bought it, like everything was sticking to it. Like freaking garlic was sticking to it. And like, how does garlic stick to anything? It's just garlic. So it's super, super frustrating. But in my experience, I've seen a lot of interesting tricks to like, I've seen like people talking about bluing their carbon steel and like heating. I've seen some folks talking about like flash cooking vegetables and that helps season it. But in my experience, really the best way of seasoning a wok is just start cooking in it. And that's gonna do the trick. Which is like all the more important about finding a good one because you really don't want to have to restart. So. Cool. Next up, so what I just added, that was 2 tablespoons of black bean sauce, which is probably the weirdest thing to throw into a Kung Pao chicken because it does not really even belong in stir fries. It more belongs in noodle dishes. You see a lot of like dajiamian uses black bean sauce in Chinese food very, very heavily. Today we're using it in our sauce because it has a lot of like really, really rich umami to it. This stuff is very, very pungent, or it's very, very dense. So when you do use black bean sauce, use that stuff really sparingly. That was just 2 tablespoons of it. And we don't want to overdo it on that stuff because it will get very overwhelming very quickly. Next up, this is some lao gan ma, or I guess you could call it like a chili crisp, chili oil, spicy chili oil, something like that. And what we're doing is we're Some folks actually, I saw someone on YouTube actually ask me about this. Lao Gan Ma is a chili crisp oil. It is essentially red chili flakes with some like bean curds that's long cooked in oil. And that oil, when it cooks for that long, will develop a really, really nice, interesting spice to it. And because it is oil, it has a very, very pervasive quality about it. So you can, if you want, just use the oil, and that will give you this really interesting heat that's very, very subtle because it's an oil. What you can also do, which you just saw me do, is use the chili crisp too. So I like using the chili crisp because I find that it's really interesting and has a nice texture to it that I love adding to a lot of stir fries. But I know a lot of other recipes, especially I've even done this in some recipes too, when I'm trying to develop a sauce that is particularly smooth and doesn't have a lot of debris. It's pretty clean and crisp. I oftentimes will leave out that the chili crisps, just to kind of achieve the smoothness of the sauce that I'm looking for. But yes, Lao Gan Ma has a lot of different things in it. So it definitely has red chili flake. That's where the heat comes from. It also has some bean curds in it, and super often you will see it done with peanuts, which you'll see floating around here. Those are peanuts. Cool. All right, last thing that we want to do, the whole reason that we just assembled this off heat, is season to taste. Taste it. What does it need? Mine needs a little bit of salt, and I think a little bit of soy sauce, which is kind of what I was expecting. Yeah, and that's gonna do it. So that's our sauce, and we're gonna set up a couple more things before we start cooking. Or actually, just one more thing. Yeah, sure. The very last thing that I'm going to put together before we head over to the stove is a cornstarch slurry. If you've ever followed one of these streams before, you'll know that I do this in pretty much every wok stir fry. And it comes up in a lot of Chinese cooking because it is the starchy element that we use to sort of thicken up our sauces. So without the cornstarch, our sauce is going to be pretty loose and kind of liquidy. With this, once we add our cornstarch, though, it's going to start developing this nice thicker and a more cohesive element to the sauce. So I think of it a lot in a similar way to the way that pasta sauce uses pasta water in Italian cooking, because the pasta water contains a lot of starch from the pasta. In a similar fashion, we do a similar thing in Chinese cooking, but instead of pasta water, we use cornstarch. Cool. Let's do some cooking. All right, over on the stove, I've got my wok. I probably should have preheated it earlier, but it's not, so we're starting to heat it up now. If we were really committed, we want our marinade in our chicken to have gotten at least 30 minutes or so of time before we start cooking. Today we're not going to do that because I forgot and I didn't do it long enough. But it'll be fine. Very rarely do I actually give the marinade as long as it needs. But if you're really committed, about 30 to 45 minutes, up to an hour even, will really even benefit the kind of depth of flavor from that chicken. So today, I have always said, and I will stand by it, today what we're going to do is a lot of batch cooking. So the reason that we're doing a lot of batch cooking today is because a kung pao chicken contains a lot of ingredients. So we just chopped up a whole bunch of different veggies. And if we're not careful about how many ingredients that we throw into our wok, we're eventually going to start experiencing this issue with wok cooking on a home range, where the temperature of the wok is going to start rapidly decreasing. So we'll get to the point where we're going to start being, if we don't start batch cooking, we're going to get in a world where we're cooking on a very medium-low heat, because there are so many things in the wok that the wok is not able to stay hot anymore. So in a lot of restaurant cooking, you will see them throw a whole bunch of stuff into the wok. And the reason that they can do that is because in those restaurants they're cooking on burners that go way hotter than your home range does. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't cook on a wok in a home range. It just means that we have to approach it a little bit differently. So the main thing that we do to work around that is a process called batch cooking. So what we're going to do today is cook our chicken first. So I very often separate it by proteins. Today we're cooking our chicken first with our garlic and ginger, and then we're going to pull it out and then cook our veggies next. So what's going to happen is by removing the chicken while we're cooking the vegetables, it keeps that wok really, really hot, or at least as hot as it can possibly get, so that while the chicken is cooking, the chicken cooks on high heat, and then while the vegetables are cooking, the vegetables also cook on high heat. So we have all of the elements of our stir fry cooked on extremely high heat, but none of them are ever in the wok at the same time until the very, very end, when we're really just mixing to combine. Well, yeah, Marina, yeah, it looks like I added everything but the kitchen sink except for the salt, yeah. Yeah, the wok looks great. Yeah, thank you. I'm super stoked. It took me a long time to get the wok that clean. But I have been having this issue where this happens on frying pans too. But the little flakes of the wok were like coming off in the wok fry because I haven't been able to get it super clean in a while. So I sat down. I spent 3 hours cleaning this thing, and it looks super clean now. So yeah. Cool. We're almost there. Yeah, cool. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're cooking here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST, with new recipes out on the YouTube channel every Friday. So last Friday we came out with a recipe for Chinese steamed egg custard, which is a breakfast dish, so I didn't end up cooking it on stream today. But very, very often, if you tune in on a Monday, I'll probably be cooking through the recipe that came out on Friday. So last Friday we came out with the recipe for, I think that was bibimbap, which is a Korean rice bowl, and on Monday we cooked through it, which was super fun. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel and check that stuff out. Lots of fun new content like that coming up every Friday, including the recipe, all of the recipes that we cook on stream. Also, there's a whole schedule of our live streams, so if you want to find out what I'm going to be cooking next, that all lives over on the YouTube channel. This particular recipe that we're cooking today is a Panda Express hack that I had written for a larger series that I've been doing, where I've been deconstructing a lot of American classics. So things like Kung Pao chicken, General Tso's chicken, lots of stuff that comes from places like Panda Express. Taking a look at what are the American qualities to it and what would it look like if we were to attempt to do those dishes through the lens of a more traditional wok cook. So in a lot of those recipes, I'll do two different versions. So there will be one version that's very Americanized, and there'll be another version that's a little bit more traditional, or at least drawing elements from traditional wok cooking. So if you're interested in stuff like that, hop over to the YouTube channel and check that out. Lots of fun new content. We're working our way to 3,500 subs by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit our subscribe goal, please subscribe. Cool. Yeah. All right, so our wok is very hot, or about as hot as a wok is going to get on a home range. And then what we're going to do is start with, this is going to be 4 tablespoons of peanut oil. Well, probably closer to 3 tablespoons of peanut oil. I'm holding back on the oil a little bit with our chicken. And that's because our chicken has a lot of fat in it. So as we cook the chicken today, it's going to start rendering out a lot of fat. So that's going to give us a little bit more fat than the rest of our wok fry. But generally, anytime that we're batch cooking, we want to be conscious of how much oil we're adding with each batch. Because you want to remember that every time that you remove something from the wok, you're going to be adding it back later, which means that as you remove it, you're adding more and more oil to the wok fry. So if you're not careful and you just keep adding a lot of oil to each batch cook, what you will eventually end up having is a lot of oil and a wok fry that is way too oily. So I'm starting off, that's my garlic and ginger, followed by my chicken. And I'm being as careful as I can about holding back as much of the liquid marinade as possible here. And that's just to kind of reduce the moisture in our wok. so that will help us keep the temperature of the wok as hot as we can keep it. Alright, so that's our chicken. I'm going to let that go for, that will probably take about maybe 2 or 3 minutes before it's done cooking. And you're going to start seeing that cornstarch that we added really coming into play here, where the exterior of the chicken will start slowing down in its cook. So at this point, without that cornstarch, that chicken would probably be done cooking on the exterior already. So that's not good, because probably if it was done cooking on the exterior, it's probably not done cooking on the interior yet. So by adding a little bit of cornstarch, that really is just going to slow down the exterior cook just a little bit, so that we have a chance to cook everything evenly. Sophia Julia, oh yeah, thank you. Thanks for tuning in. You all are really cool too. So you'll start seeing too, the fat from our chicken thigh is starting to render. You'll notice that there's pools of fat that's coming off at the bottom of our wok. So that's going to be really, really useful because it's going to play a big part in how we sort of like build out the richness of our sauce. So if you don't like fat, or if you want it to be a little bit leaner, you should just use chicken breast and it will work really well. But for our case today, and generally in a lot of wok fries that I do, I love that fat because it's going to kind of like create a much thicker sauce for us. Alright, that's looking good. Yeah. Cool. Nopia, oh yeah, what are we cooking? Today we're cooking a Kung Pao chicken. It's loosely based off of a recipe that I had written. I want to say that was back in December or so, where we were hacking the Panda Express Kung Pao chicken. So the version that we're doing today is not very close to the Panda Express hack anymore, because we have incorporated a number of things that come from traditional wok cooking that you probably would not find in most American wok fries. But probably pretty commonly would come across in a lot of like traditional Chinese cooking. So today what we're using is some black bean sauce, so some fermented black bean sauce, and a little bit of doubanjiang and laoganma, all three of which are pretty common in a lot of Chinese cooking. So laoganma and doubanjiang are two elements that we use to insert a lot of spiciness and heat. And black bean sauce comes from a lot of like noodle dishes that come from Chinese cooking, but you don't generally see it in a lot of wok fries. But I've inserted it into a Kung Pao chicken, and I think it's going to work really great. Yeah. Oh, was that garlic or ginger at the beginning? It was both. So Blue Wake, that was both the garlic and ginger. So we would generally refer to that as the aromatic elements of our wok fry. And very often you will see me adding it at the very, very beginning. Super often, especially in batch cooks, I'll add it with the meat. And we let that go. It only takes about 5-10 seconds for it to really become aromatic. But really our goal is to like kind of bloom out the aromatic qualities of the garlic and ginger, and that kind of gives us the aromatic like elements of umami that we're looking for. All right. There it is. So at this point I'm removing my chicken. It is, I want to say, like 80-90% done. We don't need it to be fully cooked through. We do want it to be mostly cooked through though. And then what we want to do, super, super important, anytime that you're batch cooking, is we want to rinse out this wok. So there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that's stuck to the wok, which we don't want, because that's going to eventually just start burning. So especially in batch cooking, what we want to do is give it a rinse. And if you seasoned your wok properly, it should all just come right out. So here's our wok. And it's mostly clean. There might be a few things left behind. This is part of the benefit of using a metal spatula, is you can do that. Probably the biggest concern anytime that we're using a marinade that contains sugar is that sugar is going to start burning and crystallizing. So this probably most commonly happens when I use marinades with sugar in it, is that we have some stuff that's stuck to the bottom. That's not the end of the world. What I like doing, I generally try and avoid using things like steel wool and stuff. But what I generally like doing is just getting some paper towels and wipe it out so it looks like this. So the reason that it's black like that is because it started burning. So again, the same reason why it is super, super important when you're batch cooking to clean the wok out in between batches, because if you leave it behind, all of that black stuff that I just wiped out of the wok, it's eventually going to end up in the next part of the wok cook, which is our vegetables. So we don't want that stuff to stick around because it will kind of just contribute a lot of like black charred bits to your wok fry. Oh, I'm natural. Oh yeah, thank you. You learned so much. That's cool. I'm glad that people learn stuff from this. It's kind of how I learned how to cook too. It's just like watching people cook on the internet. I guess that's like my general goal, is to just like create content that I would watch. I like making stuff that I would watch. Cool. Great tip for cleaning the wok. Yeah, totally. Thank you. All right, next up, actually I could show this to you guys. What I'm going to use today these are actual tangent peppers. So we've been using I think we've been using Japonesa peppers, but these are tangent peppers. They're dried. And they don't taste like anything if you don't fry them first. So because they're dry, you could stick this in your mouth and it doesn't really taste like anything. It's because it's dried out. But what you usually will, oftentimes you will see this in a lot of Chinese wok fries. I think most iconically you will see it used in Kung Pao chicken. So you can't really make Kung Pao chicken without tangent peppers. But what's very, very important about tangent peppers is that they don't taste like anything if you don't bloom it in oil first. So when you use them, it's very important that it has to get into the wok while the wok is empty. So super useful to be batch cooking right now because we just emptied out the wok, so we can add it to this very, very empty wok. So if you add tangent peppers late, so that's a common and like super common mistake is to add it really, really late because they're afraid they're going to burn it. It won't taste like anything. It will just be like weird debris in your wok fry, and it'll look really pretty because it's there, but it's not. You're not going to get any real heat out of it. So, super important. If you want those peppers to taste like something, add it while the wok is empty. Cool. So I'm repeating my wok batch or wok cook again. So we're just adding that's another 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, and then we're going to do our long yao. And we're adding our tangent peppers here. And it really doesn't take very long for them to start blooming. We just want to give it maybe 10 seconds. They're going to darken in color quite a bit, but use your nose at this point. But when you start smelling that capsaicin coming out, that's when you know you're in a good place. Next up, I'm adding my durable veggies first. So this is my bell pepper and my zucchini. And then we're going to let that go for just long enough to cook off some of their rawness. So those durable veggies, they're pretty thick and pretty durable and have quite a bit of chew to it. So if you've ever bitten into a raw zucchini, you'll know that those things have a large bite to it. So we want to make sure that we give it enough of a head start in our wok fry here to really cook off some of that rawness. So I'm holding back on the last thing that we haven't added yet, which is our onions, because those are a lot more fragile. So if we add them right now, probably what will happen is we'll either have an undercooked zucchini or an overcooked onion. So, ooh. My ICC, my Chinese is real bad. It's getting better, but my Chinese is real bad, though. I don't read well. All right. I'm getting better, though. Hopefully I will be fluent soon. I've been studying pretty much for the last year. How high? Oh, how high is the burner on? Yeah. Bulk hunter, that's a good question. So Probably for the entire stream, you'll notice that I haven't actually touched the temperature of the burner. It has been on hot, like the hottest that the temperature of the burner will get on my hottest burner for literally the entire duration of time. So what we're trying to do is imitate as closely as we can those big propane burners that you see in a lot of restaurants. Those things get really, really hot. And if we were on one of those cooks, this would probably be burning by now. But we can't achieve that because a home burner doesn't go that hot. No home burner ever goes that hot unless you have like a restaurant burner in your house, which some really fancy home burners do. So I guess that's true. but for the standard home burner like mine, it won't go that hot. So what we need to do is heat it up as hot as possible and then use batch cooking. You would think that, yeah, you would think appliance companies would have a stovetop with a strong burner. I'm pretty sure that you can find that actually. It's just really, really expensive. The last time that I watched Kenji Lopez's channel, so if you haven't checked out Kenji Lopez at all, he has a really cool YouTube channel. He has like a food science background, so he has like a lot of really interesting insights on like not just like Chinese cooking, but just like general cooking. But he moved recently, and I'm pretty sure that his new kitchen has one of those like really, really high burning wok burners. I might be wrong, but he's never actually talked about it. So, but I know that you can definitely find that stuff if you pay enough money for your home burner. All right, so I'm adding my chicken back to the wok here, followed finally by my onions. And at this point, you will notice there's a lot of things in my wok at this point. So things are going to start cooling down in the wok pretty quickly so we could even listen. I don't even need that overhead anymore because the temperature of the wok has dropped so much that it's not really burning at like extremely high heat. We're probably at like a medium simmer at this point. For our case, that's totally okay because we're not really cooking anything anymore. We're really just sort of like tossing everything to combine. So that's going to be okay in our case, but if at any point you hear that happen in your wok fry and you're not done cooking, that's a big old problem because you're on your way to a very mushy stir fry. You're going to end up eating oatmeal. Oh yeah, you saw his outdoor burner. I've been thinking about getting one of those. Those things look crazy, but like totally unnecessary. You don't need one of those. But also, that's so cool. All right, next up, or last thing I'm adding here, that's just a handful of peanuts. No one saw that. And then the very last thing that I'm going to add is our sauce. So you will notice at this point I'm not adding all of the sauce to our wok fry here. I'm going to add it. This is going to go in maybe like a quarter cup at a time here. So we're adding it and then checking. We're sort of tossing to combine and seeing like checking on the color and consistency of our wok fry. And if it needs all of it, we can add all of it. But if we don't need all of it, don't add all of it. And I think we need all of ours today. And I'm actually going to dilute it a little bit. A little bit of water. And we're on our way to a mushy stir fry. So I'm killing the heat and we're adding our cornstarch slurry. And that's going to thicken things up for us and we should be there. Ooh, lots of questions. Oh, so yeah, you didn't know about the peppers. Yeah, I have definitely made that mistake. Or sometimes I've forgotten and then just add them really late, and they just don't taste like anything. It will still look like really pretty, so you could take a picture of it for Instagram, and it's gonna be like, whoa, that's so pretty. It's a tangent pepper, but it doesn't taste like anything. It's just annoying because you have to eat around it. So. Oh, indignantly, yeah. The first time that you bloomed your peppers, you had to evacuate the kitchen with a blower. Yeah, I have definitely done that, and yeah, it sucks. Try not to do that. But yeah, that's also, I actually recommend that more when like cooking fresh peppers. So I run into that problem a lot when I use Thai chilies, because Thai chilies are like very, very pungent, and they release a lot of smoke, especially if you leave those seeds in. So. Definitely, every time that I cook with fresh chilies, I always make sure to open those windows first, because it will for sure cause you to have a coughing fit, and then you're gonna have to like throw open all the windows, turn on all the fans, all that. It's a real pain in the butt. But if you're trying to get any flavor out of those dry peppers, though, you gotta bloom them first. They won't taste like anything. Alright. Oh, shoot. Last thing that I'm going to add here, I totally forgot. Actually, I don't think we need it. I was going to add some Szechuan peppercorn, but I forgot. And I don't think we need it. This is already pretty spicy. Alright. Probably should have removed this from the wok first. So the last thing that we want to do, if you're paying attention, is remove everything from your wok. So what you don't want to do is what I just did, is leave things sitting in your wok. You want this thing to be emptied, because as things cool down in your wok, things are going to start sticking, because your wok, especially if you have a carbon steel wok like this one, is only non-stick for the duration of time that it is hot. Once it cools down, it's not going to have a non-stick surface anymore. Things are going to start sticking to it, which is kind of happening, not really. So what I always recommend doing at the end of every time that we cook something is rinse your wok down. And if you do it correctly, I actually just used a little bit of a sponge on my wok because I forgot. But if you do it correctly, everything should just come right off of it. So you'll notice that my wok is pretty much clean. The only thing that I did was I used a little bit of the sponge because I forgot some stuff stuck. And then the last thing that we want to do is, first of all, dry it off. I'm putting it back on heat, and then I'm just giving it a wipe down, and then one more coating of oil. Very, very loose coating of oil. And this is just going to prevent any kind of carbonization or rusting or stuff like that from happening. Which means that we want to do it for any part of the wok that is made out of carbon steel, which is, in this case, the whole wok. And I'm going to do it. Oh, no PM, what goes into making the sauce? Yeah. So the sauce was something that we threw together in the first half of the stream. So it was black vinegar, fish sauce, soy sauce, black bean sauce, and a little bit of brown sugar. If you're looking for it, the recipe lives over on my YouTube channel. Over here. All of the recipes always live over there, so if you're looking for the exact elements of things that I added, that is going to live over there. But if you're paying attention, the things that don't belong in a Kung Pao chicken, that would be the black bean sauce. And probably fish sauce. You wouldn't really come across that in a lot of Chinese food. So at this point, if you want, you can probably start picking out those tangent peppers. They're not going to taste like anything at this point. They're just going to be annoying to eat around. I know that lots of Lots of places will leave it in because it's really photogenic. It looks really pretty. But they don't taste like anything. They're just annoying now because you got to eat around them. But they're really pretty though. Let's use these. Cool. New chopsticks. Yeah. Right, let's taste this. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, filled with flavor. Very, very tender piece of chicken. But also like nice and like flash cooked on the exterior, so it's a little bit crispy, but very, very tender on the interior. Lots and lots of flavor coming from that sauce, so like a nice bit of very, very subtle heat that's coming from that lao gan ma because it's made out of oil. So it has this really interesting quality about it where it like goes throughout the entire dish because it's spreading that oil everywhere. But it's also very, very subtle and like very, very underlying underneath everything else that we've added. So one of my favorite hot chili oil, or one of my favorite ways of adding spice to a dish right now is using that lao gan ma. And then also those tangent peppers giving us a nice like really bright heat coming from the capsaicin that's releasing. You love the colors? Yeah, Kung Pao chicken, it's a very, very photogenic dish because it has so many colors to it. But in my opinion, actually, when I remember to do it, one of my bigger preference is to use an orange bell pepper, which doesn't look quite as pretty because it like kind of clashes with the green of the zucchini. But I think that the real reason that people use red bell pepper in a Kung Pao chicken is because it looks pretty. But I like using a orange bell pepper when I remember to get one because it's actually a little bit like sweeter. And I think riper. But today I had a red bell pepper, so we used the red bell pepper. It is really pretty though, for sure. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, thanks guys. All right. I think that's everyone. I don't think I missed anything, but let me know if I missed any questions. Feel free and repeat yourself too. I know I miss questions all the time, so if I miss something, feel free and repeat yourself in the chat, and I'll do my best to circle back and answer everyone. If you have any questions too, definitely drop them in the chat. Also, if you're looking for the recipe, I linked it a little bit earlier too. But if you're looking for the recipe, that always lives over on my YouTube channel. Those recipe videos, they tend to move a little bit slower, and we kind of like talk through some of the things that I'm doing. And like why I add stuff and why I leave some certain things out. This particular recipe, it comes from a whole series that I've been doing where I've been deconstructing a lot of Chinese American classics, so a lot of things that come from Panda Express, specifically because they are not like authentic Chinese, it's because they're inauthentic Chinese food. It's really interesting to kind of take a look at what those dishes would look like if we were to cook them through the lens of like traditional and authentic Chinese cuisine. So. The particular version of Kung Pao chicken that we did today used to have, I think the Panda Express version that I used had more sugar in it, and it was definitely a lot saucier. So it had like all of the, kind of just like a sensory overload of saute. And like what I did for the version that I sort of dialed back some of those sweet elements and added a few things that come from wok cooking, but they don't really come from American wok cooking or Chinese American wok cooking. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel. Check out some of those recipes. Those are coming out every Friday, so if you're looking for something new to watch, that's a fun place to be. We're working our way up to 3,500 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit the subscriber goal, please subscribe. I believe we fixed Ham Charles, so if you want to see the hamster eating ramen, he only gets to eat if you subscribe. I think we fixed him. I don't really know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it mostly just doesn't work. Cool. Thanks, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. We'll be back tomorrow cooking something. I forgot what we're cooking. I think we're doing some kind of chicken. I don't remember. I think we're doing a noodle dish. It might be pad thai. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you soon.
You're as sweet as strawberry wine. Your bed warm as a glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
isn't the best place to find a lover, so the bar is where I go. Me and my friends sat at the table doing shots, drinking fast, and then we talk slow. If you come over and start up a conversation with just me, then trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, put Panda Man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Said, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room. And now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.
One weekend we let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up a plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour and how your family is doing okay. We'll even get in a taxi. We'll kiss in the backseat. Tell the driver make the radio play. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. You said, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room. And now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why. I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.
Come on, be my baby, come on. 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 Come on, be my baby, come on.